It looks like Eric Byrnes out there.
Hit the wall, Byrnesy.
Let me tell you something, Mad Dog. All right, here's Eric Byrnes, Studio K. Today looks like $1 million. We're going to have some fun with him. He flew in and froze at Kennedy there on Sunday night in the coldest day in the history of New York. -2, but here he is. Eric, welcome. How are you?
Mad Dog, thank you. You know what's funny is that every week when I do these hits from San Francisco, I'm not able to see you on the other side. So when I come on wearing whatever attire I'm wearing and you're always bashing me, it's Pat Riley in a T-shirt. Quit wearing the pajamas. Yeah, let me tell you something, Mad Dog. What is that sweatshirt you're wearing?
This is an MLB sweatshirt. Tommy Bahama, they want to sponsor it. They want me to wear these.
Is that salmon?
The dope. He tells me to wear the sweatshirts.
What
are you blaming me for?
It looks like you threw up on your shirt.
I got a Boardwalk Empire T-shirt on, too. Anyway, let's have some fun. Before you know, we're going to want to retire your number. I mean, what is it with these retired numbers? I mean, enough of it for crying out loud in sports. Hall of Fame before you get your number retired. You disagree?
Not really. I mean, it's the Yankees are doing it their way. They always have. And I think if there's a significant player that defined an era for them, they decide that they're going to go ahead and retire their number. I think that's what they're doing here with the core four, obviously, with Jeter, Bernie Williams, Jorge Posada, Andy Pettitte. I mean, there they are. For me, though, when I'm looking at this thing, I'm looking at other teams around Major League Baseball and thinking to myself, are the Yankees the only team that can retire numbers? Because let's go out to San Francisco, where they haven't retired a single number that's not a Hall of Famer. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, because if Barry Bonds never gets into the Hall of Fame, will the San Francisco Giants retire his number? And
Good point.
I've been on this campaign for a while now, as I've seen one schmuck wear 22 after another. My favorite, by far favorite player who defined an entire era of baseball for me as a San Francisco Giants fan growing up in the 1980s there was Will Clark. And Will Clark, because for whatever reason he decides to retire a little early, not hang around till he's 45 years old trying to scrap out hit number 3,000. This guy right here was the everything of San Francisco. Six-time All-Star, top 5 in the MVP. I think like 5 different times. So, if you're going to grab a player and say, man, this is really who defines who we were for an extended period of time, Will Clark, in my opinion, his number should be retired.
Listen, I love Will Clark. He, to the Giant fan, he sort of brings back a spirit of the team. They were terrible in '85. He came up in '86 with Bobby Thompson. The first game, I think he hit a home run off Nolan Ryan. He killed Maddox in the '89 postseason. He was a great postseason hitter. I'm with you on Clark and everything you said, but he's not a Hall of Famer. And I do not believe you should retire anybody's number as a franchise unless that player played for you as a Hall of Famer. And Clark, because of a variety of issues, including injury, is not a Hall of Famer. So 22 should not be retired.
The Yankees retired 38 numbers.
And they're wrong.
38
and the Yankees are dead wrong. Andy Pettitte should not have his number retired.
This is the way I understand it, is that Major League Baseball, it looks at retiring numbers kind of like you do. And this is what's admirable about me for the Yankees, is they're like, hey, look, we're not concerned what Major League Baseball tells us to do or doesn't tell us to do. If we feel like a player was significant enough for a significant period of time, we're going to go ahead and retire the number. The Giants need to come out and make that step. And I think if you want to let Bonds in, you want to end up retiring his number in San Francisco, I think the guy to start with, to set precedent now that you don't have to be a Hall of Famer, start with Will Clark a couple years later. Go ahead and retire 25 Barry Bonds.
In a funny way, it's weird. I would never think of saying this. You just made me think of something. I would have less trouble with the Giants retiring Bonds than I would with Clark, because Bonds, listen, and we all know he cheated, but he's a Giant. He is a Hall of Famer prior to the PEDs. I actually can live with that more, and I love Will. Will's one of my all-time favorites, but again, I'm going to stick with my rule. Hall of Famer, because if you don't stick with that, then you're going to put everybody in who you just think's a big-time player for your franchise. I'm going to stick to my rule. Hall of Fame, that's the only way you get your number retired. And since Bonds is a Hall of Famer, quote-unquote, I can retire his number. So you made me think there. It's a good job.
You put Bonds in the Hall of Fame?
No, I do not, but I understand the reason why, and he is a Giant. He's been a great Giant. I don't have a problem retiring his number. Now, I'm not going to love it. I wouldn't watch it. I'm not part of the ceremony, but I understand the Giants going that direction. I want to talk to you about Giambi for a second, because everybody loves him as a teammate. Terry Francona thinks he's going to be a great manager one day. Another guy who had some issues, but he recovered from that. The Yankees loved him. The Indians loved him. And I think you probably loved him as a teammate in Oakland. Is that correct?
Yeah, one of the coolest things ever was actually in 2001, he handed out, I got called up August 22nd of 2000, so essentially played a month and a half with the team. And that next season, we actually arrived to spring training, and he had a bat for every one of the guys who was on the team the year before. And it was said, signed, like, thanks for being a part of my MVP season, Jason Giambi. And he handed it out to everybody. One of the most down-to-earth, easygoing superstars that I ever played with, by far. And I hopefully we'll get a chance to see him stay in baseball and even manage one day.
You know, it's funny about Giambi. He was a good Yankee. Now, he wasn't as great as we thought he might be when he signed a big contract. But in 2003, his game against Pedro in Game 7 is a very underrated game because he hit 2 home runs in that game. And he kept the Yankees alive before they beat Pedro in the bottom of the 8th with that great rally and tied the game up and then won the next innings. He almost forget that Giambi hit 2 home runs in a winning game in a Game 7 of the American League Championship Series against the Red Sox. You almost forget about that great game that Giambi had, Eric. How about that?
I think you almost forget about the career that Jason Giambi had in New York, and I think so much of it was, surrounded with the PED use and everything else. But, really, he was the poster child of how to deal with it. I mean, here we are, and we're celebrating his retirement however many years later, where I think a lot of other guys, think of all the other PED guys that just kind of banished into retirement, and we don't even have a mention of them. Half of them didn't even announce their retirement. They just went away. And here you are with Jason Giambi. I think it's a lesson, not just to other baseball players, who have been caught with performance-enhancing drugs or tied to performance-enhancing drugs. Look, just admit it. Admit you did wrong in this country. The fans, everyone, they're
going to forgive you.
Yeah, it's very forgiving, but everyone likes honesty and truth. Truth always speaks, and the greatest thing about Jason is, he came out right away and admitted to everything, admitted he was wrong.
You could do it once that way. Now, you can't do it a second time. Once you say you're sorry, everybody's going to take that, no problem, get a second chance. But A-Rod, as we know, you don't get a second opportunity to say you're sorry. I messed up again. You don't get that. You get the one time. And Giambi took advantage of that. It's 100% right. Good job today, Eric. You're flying. Stay warm. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. My pal,
do something
Eric
about
Byrnes.
that shirt, please.
Please. Tell Ethan. Good job, Mr. Climber. Mr. Byrnes, and obviously Mr. Kleinberg with the Tommy Bahama sweatshirt.